What is the single worst situation you ever found yourself in? When I was 19, I was employed at a local newspaper. It was a physically demanding job and I worked the night shift. I'm female. 5 foot, 2 inches tall. So short. At the time, I lived with my mom and abusive stepdad in a 3-bedroom apartment with my 4 younger siblings. The job I worked was the only one I could find at the time. And with my stepdad and mom pestering me on a daily basis to get a job, I was just happy to get one. One day, shortly before I had to go for my shift at work, my stepdad was being a shithead to my siblings and my mom sided with my stepdad. This wasn't a new occurrence, but this one day, I had enough and spoke up. What was new is that, instead of standing up to my stepdad, I yelled at my mom. That is what brought the shitstorm. We spent a good 30 to 45 minutes telling at each other before I had to go to work. I was warned that I would be kicked out. I left angry and just focused on work. After a particularly long and shitty shift, I walked home and saw 3 black plastic garbage bags on the patio in front of the sliding glass door to the apartment. As I walked up, my stepdad opened the door, placed one more bag out, saw me and stepped back inside. I heard the click of the lock. I didn't beg. I didn't plead. I just sat there, stunned and heartbroken. I had nowhere to go. I didn't have a driver's license or a car. I had no phone. I sat for a moment and stifled angry tears. My boyfriend, now husband, was in the military and a 2-hour drive away. I ended up calling a coworker named Deb from the apartment's rental office, who came and got me and all my stuff. No questions asked. I ended up living with her and her daughter who was born with cerebral palsy. Deb and Jess. I was super ducked and she helped me. I want someone out there to know that Deb was an excellent person and one of the reasons my life is any kind of good is because of her. You'd do me a solid if you included people like Deb in any Thanksgiving tomorrow. If you're so inclined. Edit. Thank you for giving a thought for Deb. Hugs and love to you too. TW Graphic and Death. From 14 to 18 I was my grandmother's caretaker. Mom passed when little. Dad was never around. 3 years ago I came home from work around midnight to find her passed away on our couch. Called 911 and had to touch her to see if I could do CPR. She must have passed not long before I went into work that morning, as she was ice cold when I touched her. Looked like she was sitting up eating breakfast, then had a heart attack and kinda slumped over on the couch still sitting up. Her tongue was hanging out all black. All of this by myself. Close street family was 40 minutes away. Called them while paramedics were assessing if she passed or not, and my uncle heard two paramedics say she did over the phone. He then had to wake my aunt, grandma's daughter, and tell her. Sat on the end of my driveway for about an hour or so before they showed up. It was about another hour before I was allowed to go inside and grab my purse and clothes. Then drove an hour away to my aunt's. To get to my room I had to pass the couch where she passed, so that was fun. Especially since I had to go back eventually and grab high ticket items and the rest of whatever I wanted from my old room. 95% of it was tossed by my family as I couldn't bring myself to grab more than a suitcase worth of stuff. My brother was days away from dying of cancer. I live out of state, but I visited him on a Saturday and we celebrated his birthday. I promised to be back several days later, and when I came back he was lying on the floor of the nursing home moaning in pain. He was agitated, kicking the blanket off and moving restlessly. His skin was ice cold. He looked at me, and I knew he saw me. I prayed that his pain would be relieved, and immediately he stopped moaning and moving. I didn't realize it at first, but he was dead. Then I had to drive 3 hours to tell my dad that his son was dead. Not a good day. Still, I'm glad I was there for his last moments on earth, and glad that he knew I was there. He was my little brother and he always looked to me to protect him. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's horrible. I'm glad you were there for him. Trapped, immobile, under a house for 4 hours. Okay, you gotta give the whole story now, I'm interested. Fell in my house's septic tank. Can you tell the story pleases? My boyfriend used to work as a septic tank worker, and I was told that you could die if you were in there for too long. What happened? Basically, my family built a separate septic tank next to the one we had originally. Their thought was when the main septic tank overfilled it would drain into the new one they built. It was not really built. It was more of a hole that was deep enough to hold the waste from the overfilling septic tank. They only covered it with a really big piece of plywood and dirt. About a year later, I wasn't watching where I was stepping and broke through the plywood and fell right in. The hole was deep, about 7 to 8 feet. I went all the way in and was literally drowning in shit. I screamed for help, but there was no one home at the time. I somehow got the strength to pull myself out of there. I got out gasping for air. I quickly rinsed myself off with a hose and threw up. I got in the shower and scrubbed like a madman. After it happened, I was sick for about 2 weeks. I was only 15 at the time. Right now, looking after my dad who has Alzheimer's, living off of 70 quid a week. I feel like jumping off a bridge to be honest, but it's not an option. There's always a way out bro, but that's not it. I was in a put out or get gang raped situation once. I was smart enough to act like I was going along with it and had to freshen up. As soon as I was in the bathroom I locked the door, fiddled with the water, flushed the toilet while blocking the door with a shelf that I'm so lucky was in there while calling my mom who called the cops. Then I just braced against the door and waited for what seemed like forever for someone to show up. Gotta give props to my mom, who always told me I could call her no matter what. She didn't say shit. She just got me out of there and took me home as the cops were clearing the party. We did discuss it later, but I wasn't in trouble as far as I wasn't grounded. I'll take a 4-hour lecture over rape any day. It was incredibly stupid of me to be at a party with people I barely knew who were older than me. Major learning experience. At least I took my mum's previous advice about being aware of my surroundings, so I could clearly give an address. Wow. Good mom to tell you that, but also to not go back on it and ground you for it. My little brother passing away from cancer. He was 11. His little emaciated, cold and hairless body in the coffin seriously messed me up for a while. That was probably the hardest I've ever cried, and that's including the recent overdose death of my sister and heart attack death of my father. The close second is my sister, because it's strongly suspected that the drugs she used were my mother's, who can be quite manipulative. This is the hardest of all to read. So sorry. Thank you. On the first day of a 4-day cruise with my boyfriend, I found a video where he was kissing someone else. Cruise had already left port and I had no way to go back home. So the whole vacation was kind of horrible. That's shitty. FYI, if you or anyone else ever finds yourself in such a situation on board, talk to the crew, liaison, whoever. Sometimes you can switch to a different room for a slight fee. I paid $100 to change to my own stateroom when a friend X invited me on a cruise and then had a serious mental break during it. They were very nice about it. Might or might not have worked in your case, but it's always worth a try. Seeing my dog getting killed by a pit bull. Tomorrow will be the 8th year without her. Edit. Accidentally deleted the notification, so I could not reply. I just wanted to thank whoever gave me the award. Please tell me it gets easier with time. 1 week ago today our Yorkie was killed by a dog that got away from its owner. He was minding his own business laying in the sunshine in our yard. The grief has been terrible. While I still miss her, I was able to manage my grief throughout the years. I'm so sorry to hear about the passing of your dog. It's so heartbreaking to hear this happening. I understand the grief you are going through. Sending you my support. I was working security in an emergency ward when a lead member of a gang affiliated with the Hells Angels came in all shot up. Assassination attempt by a rival gang, of course. The police were only here when they dropped the guy off to take a statement and then took off on us. We had no police presence in that hospital and that rival gang was still out there looking to finish this guy off, and a waiting room full of likely armed gangsters eager for a firefight. For 18 hours we had zero police presence in that hospital before they decided to give this guy police protection. And I know it was 18 hours because was there. I counted. And I made an insane amount of overtime which I used to buy myself a nice canoe. So not all bad news, but still pretty bad. I have one that didn't seem scary until hours later. My roommate and I were downtown Austin about to catch a show. We'd parked her car a few blocks away from the venue, and before exiting she asked me, "Should we bring my pepper spray?" I answered, "No, when have we ever needed it? We'll be fine." Famous last words. The show was a bust, and not even 30 minutes after our arrival, we were walking back to her car to head home. We're crossing the street when we hear footsteps speeding up behind us and someone mutter, "Stupid ducking bitches," under their breath. When we get to the sidewalk, this woman abruptly rips my crossbody purse completely off of me. I didn't even have time to think. I just clocked her across the face, and it luckily had enough momentum behind my punch to drop her to the ground. While she was sprawled out on the concrete, I grabbed my backpack from her, still on the ground. She's yelling, "I'm going to call the police. You just assaulted me." My friend and I both laughed. Friend replied, "You assaulted her. She defended herself." We walked back to her car without further incident, laughing and recounting the story the whole way home. It wasn't until we arrived home and settled in that the adrenaline wore off and we realized how serious that cold been. If that woman would have had a weapon, an accomplice, or the altercation would have begun in the street, who knows? I called the non-emergency number in the area and just gave a description of the woman. Obviously, she wasn't really going to contact the police, and the altercation occurred right across the street from a resource center for the homeless and a number of venues/bars, so there's just a lot going on in that area. A lot of people. Anyway, we never left the pepper spray behind again. Never forget the pepper spray. Very violent and disturbing content ahead. I broke up with ex 3 months ago. About 2 months later, I moved out into a new apartment. I did not tell him the address. Last month, I woke up in the middle of the night to my ex hitting and choking new BF, who had been sleeping next to me. I pleaded with ex to stop and didn't try to engage physically. BC, I knew he was much stronger than me and about 80+ pounds heavier. I could hear gurgling sounds. BF's blood in his throat. There was so much blood, even from what little I could see from the light of the moon and street lamps outside. BF kicked X off of him, and I reached for my phone to call the police. X knocked the phone out of my hand and I lunged for it. He held me back by the ankle. A struggle ensued, and X was holding me down. BF got him in a chokehold and said, "Let her go." X put his arm around my own neck and said, "If you hurt me, I hurt her." Apostrophe. BF said, "Let's just talk. Count of 3 we let go and get up and talk." X, realizing he was compromised, agreed. BF, "Nice punch BTW." X, "Thanks, you fought good too." I don't remember exactly what they said here, but I just remember being flabbergasted as BF tried to play it cool and laugh it off/defuse the situation. Me, "Please just leave, so I can call an ambulance." X, "How do I know you won't call the police?" Me, "I promise not to if you just leave right now. He's bleeding so much I just want an ambulance." BF, "Why are you doing this? What was your plan?" X, "I was going to kill you. Kill her. And then kill myself." BF, "It doesn't have to be like this. Leave and we'll just pretend this didn't happen." X, "You know that's not true. They'll catch me and I'll be in prison and my life will be over." BF, "You can plead insanity and get a lighter sentence. Get help." X, "There's no way out of this. How am I going to get out of here?" X did not have a car. I'm guessing he got there via Rideshare. BF, "Just take my car then." Eventually X agreed to leave then in exchange for me being able to call the ambulance. I rushed downstairs and searched for BF's car keys, then gave him the keys and escorted him to the car. As soon as he got in the car, I ran back inside and called an ambulance. BF was very calm, saying, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." But I was panicking hard. He needed extensive surgery. Neither of us had noticed in the dark, but X had stabbed him with a large kitchen knife. The tip of the knife broke off and lodged into his skull, touching his brain. Mentally, he is totally fine. I was amazed to discover that he had talked my ex out of a murder-suicide with such severe injuries. BF's other major injuries were a deep scar to one side of his face and all the tendons severed in one arm. He has about 6 months of physical therapy ahead of him, but doctors think he will make a full recovery. The situation I'm in now isn't too great either. Looking for a job and stressed by pressure from family / trying to work on my mental health and deal with trauma. Edit. Thanks for the awards. If you're able, consider donating to your local woman's shelter or a mental health institution. X needed mental health help but refused it. Also, if any of you have questions, I made an AMA post. You can find it in my post history. Waking up to my mother's screams when her ex-husband called to tell her their son, my half-brother, was dead. My heart just broke for the both of you. I'm sorry for your loss. In 2012 I was 466 pounds of goo. I was told by the doctor that I was going to die in a year if I didn't lose weight. So I started to later on the keto diet. After 4 years, I was down to 230ish. And 2 years after that, 200ish. Plateaued. No working out at all. Just diet. On July 8, 2020, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Despite my incredible weight loss, I couldn't outrun the BATAS. Now I'm 155ish. Thanks to medication side effects and lack of appetite, but still healthy, and blood glucose well under control. I'm not insulin dependent yet, but doctors said I will be in 15 years. Congratulations on what you've achieved. It's not easy. If you can take back control over your health, there's no telling what else you can do in this life. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed this video.